guys have taken all the... What you need to record is there. Because they will not come here to talk. Yes, I'll be talking here. They will talk from there. So maybe you should find out where the feed is going there and tap it from there. Or you understand me? Yes, because none of them is coming here to talk. You understand me? I think President Orama would speak. Yeah. But when it starts, you cannot come up and be changing where the mic is. So just put it on the table there and just forget about it. Excuse me. No. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the African Export-Import Bank, commonly referred to as Afrexim Bank, and the government of the Republic of Ghana, I welcome all of you to the pre-event press conference of the Afrexim Annual Meetings 2023. For the next 1 hour or so, I'll be your moderator. My name is Ni Okai Nunu. In 1993, African governments, African private and institutional investors, and non-African investors came together to establish the Afrexim Bank. For 30 years, Afrexim has been deploying innovative structures to deliver financing solutions that support the transformation of the structure of Africa's trade, accelerating industrialization and intra-regional trade, thereby boosting economic expansion in Africa. Between 2016 and 2022, Afrexim disbursed over $86 billion for projects within the territories of its member states. It would interest you to note that the first ever concluded transaction by Afrexim was in favor of the Ghana Cocoa Board. And that tells you that there has been a relationship ab initio between Ghana and the Afrexim Bank. Today, the Afrexim Bank is here in Accra to engage our good friends from the media as a precursor to the 30th Afrexim Annual Meetings. This event will mark the high point of the bank's year-long 30th anniversary celebrations under the theme, Delivering the Vision, Building Prosperity for Africans. 30 years ago, the founding fathers of Afrexim Bank launched a bold initiative for Africans. The hard work of the past 3 decades in pursuit of that vision has shaped what AfriExim has become today, a catalyst for transforming Africa's trade. Before I introduce the chairman and speakers for today, permit me to share some information to everyone's benefit. We have about 30 journalists in this hall, and of course, they are the reason we are all gathered here, so we can share some good news to them. But there's an equally large number of journalists who are with us virtually, and they would all form part of the event we are having today. I'd say you're welcome to all of you here, including those online. Kindly note that there are interpretation services available for anyone who does not speak English. Today's program will feature introductory messages from our speakers. This would be followed by a question and answer session. The protocol here, and I believe you are all conversant with it, my good friends from the media. If you need to ask a question, kindly raise your hands, and then once I have invited you, you can introduce yourself and proceed with your question. For those online, you'd have to press the Q&A button, and you can even start filing or posting your questions online. After the Q&A session, we would have the closing and final remarks, which will be followed by a cocktail reception in the foyer. And that would be, I would say, the end of a successful event. Now that is out of the way, I would introduce our speakers for today. Our host and chairman for the event is the Honorable Minister of State at the Ministry of Finance of Ghana, Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam. Welcome, Honorable Minister. Our distinguished guest is His Excellency, the President and Chairman of the Board of Directors of the AfriExim Bank, Professor Benedict Orama. Welcome, Your Excellency. We also have with us the Honorable Deputy Minister for Information, Ghana, Madam Fatimatu Abubakar. Welcome, Honorable Minister. And somebody told me we cannot have an event like this without the central bank governor around. So please help me welcome the Governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Ernest Addison. Now that our speakers are introduced, may I invite our speakers, particularly the Honorable Minister, followed by the Governor of the Bank of Ghana, and then His Excellency, President and Chairman, Professor Oroma, to give us their introductory remarks. Honorable Minister, your audience.
Well, thank you very much, Deputy Minister Fatima Abubakar, Governor of the Central Bank of Ghana, Dr. Ernest Kwamina Addison, Mr. President of AfriExim Bank, Professor Benedict Orama, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I do this on behalf of the Honorable Minister for Finance, and I welcome everyone to this important event. It is a pleasure and honor to be part of this important event, which is to inform and update Ghanaians on an important upcoming event, the hosting of the 2023 annual meeting and the 30th anniversary celebrations of the AfriExim Bank in Ghana. And this will be done from the 18th to the 22nd June 2023. I don't know whether this is introductory remarks or a welcome address. Ladies and gentlemen, Ghana is proud to host the Afro-Exim Bank after we signed on as a member state in Abidjan on the 8th of May 1993. And we've supported the adoption of the charter of the Afro-Exim Bank in Abuja in October of that same year. As the privileged host of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat and a Class A shareholder of this bank, we are also happy to be hosting the 30th anniversary of the bank this year, the year the African Union has declared as the year of AfCFTA. It is our expectation that by hosting this commemorative milestone, we will help generate greater commitment and accelerate the effective implementation of the AfCFTA to fully benefit the continent and achieve the Africa we want under the Agenda 2063. Today, most African economies are smarting under the severe impact of three key overlapping global shocks, which have triggered macroeconomic instability, tightening financial conditions, and food insecurity. And we are all familiar with those shocks. Amidst all this, we also know that the role of global and regional trade in promoting economic dynamism and transformation is beyond question. The experiences of all other regions of the world bear ample testimony to this fact. Yet today, Africa's share of global trade is just about 3%, and intra-Africa trade is only 16%. Amongst the key reasons for this uninspiring trade performance is the lack of finance and access to trade and market information. It is in this respect that all Africans must be supportive of the Afro-Exim Bank, a bank that is set up to deliver just that and more. In the Afro-Exim Bank, we have an institution with convening power and a network of resources to significantly contribute towards finding robust solutions to these challenges. This is an institution that has grown its assets from an initial $5 billion United States dollars to 27.7 billion as of September 2022, and a net loans portfolio of 20 to 23 billion dollars. So under the team delivering the vision, building prosperity for Africans, the annual meetings and the 30th anniversary celebration is significant as it offers us an opportunity to renew our dedication to the vision of our forebears, building shared prosperity for Africans. I believe that hosting this high-level event in Ghana will also afford us the opportunity to convey our collective appreciation to the Afro-Exim Bank as a strategic partner of our country. Just last year, in the midst of what was a really difficult year in Ghana's economic history, the Afro-Exim Bank showed what cherished friendships are for. The amount of $750 million loan provided to Ghana cannot be understated. We are truly thankful for Afro-Exim Bank coming through in these difficult times. But through our enduring partnership, Ghana has undertaken significant projects in the health, transportation, energy, finance, and of course, trade financing. Key private financial institutions in Ghana have also experienced the power of Afro-Exim Bank in expanding their operations. And clearly, Ghanaians have a cause to take pride in and promote this enduring partnership between us and Afro-Exim Bank. Considering our championing role in Pan-Africanism, we owe it to our heritage and to ourselves to successfully host this important event for the continent. We are therefore making frantic efforts to assure security, health, transport, accommodation, and related protocol arrangements to ensure that the meetings are held successfully. The Accra International Conference Center has been designated as the venue for the meetings. Ladies and gentlemen, in addition to about 150 shareholders The annual meeting is expected to be attended by heads of states, and invitations have already reached a number of heads of states who have confirmed participation. But we'll also have local and international finance and development organizations, captains of industry and civil society. True to his beliefs in building African institutions for African solutions, His Excellency President Akufo-Addo will deliver the keynote address at the opening ceremony. Other strategic dialogues will be held during the meetings. So we are privileged to have the opportunity to host this event, and we look forward to providing a platform where we can deliberate and seek African solutions to African problems. I therefore urge all of you, ladies and gentlemen, especially those in the financial industry, to register and participate in this event. Prof. Benedict Orama, the President of Afro-Exim Bank, and the entire team of Afro-Exim Bank, you are welcome to Accra, the host city. We cherish you, and we want to work with you to build an enduring partnership. But let me take this opportunity also to express our appreciation for the support you have given to us during our trying moments, particularly days leading to our application for an IMF program, which was approved only 2 days ago. And the governor just informed me that $600 million has landed in their accounts. And so with this development, I am very confident that our relationship with Afro-Exim Bank will even be stronger. They came through when we didn't know what to do. And now that we have a program, I believe we will work together with Afro-Exim Bank to ensure that we deliver development benefits to our people. Thank you very much, and thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. We'll have a short address by President Oruma, but before that, may I kindly invite the Governor, Dr. Ernest Addison, to give us his remarks, his introductory message.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. MC. My presence here really is to support the Ministry of Finance in the launch of the 30th anniversary celebrations of the Afro-Exim Bank to be held in Ghana next month. And also to give moral support to my brother, President Orama, who has been a very good friend and supporter of Ghana. Anytime I had called him when we were in trouble, sometimes he's far away in some village somewhere in Nigeria in the middle of the night, he will pick the call. He's never seen a phone call come from either Ken or myself that he has, ignored. And that's the relationship that we have nurtured over the years. He has been a very strong supporter of Ghana. As you are all aware, the Afro-Exim Bank partnered with the government of Ghana, including the Bank of Ghana, to the objectives of the AFCFTA through the commercial launch of the Pan-African Payment Systems program. This PAPS program is expected to save the continent more than $5 billion annually in payment transactions costs. So this is a major innovation, a major intervention that Afro-Exim Bank has helped us, in a sense, to implement. In addition to that, they have also helped us to set up the Mansa platform, which I'm sure the MDs of the banks who are here are aware of this platform, which helps, in a sense, to assess the creditworthiness of their clients across the continent, and has helped work with the Bank of Ghana to also train users of the platform. As the minister said, Ghana is a Class A shareholder in the bank. Our shares are almost at 2.5%, and just last year we decided to purchase additional shares from the dividend payments that we got in 2022. Afrexim Bank, as I said, has been a major supporter of Ghana in the crisis year of 2022. Those of you who have been following the Ghanaian story, and when all else failed, we were not able to access capital markets. Nobody was ready to lend to Ghana, and our exchange rate was literally on a free fall. Who lends into that kind of environment? And the only financial institution globally that came to our assistance was the Afrexim Bank. We are very grateful to President Orama for the support that we have received from the bank over the years. Bank of Ghana's relationship with them includes placements that we have been making with the bank. At the peak of it, we were able to place nearly 500 million of our reserves in Afrexim Bank. And hopefully some of the money that we got with the IMF will be placed with Afrexim Bank to earn an interest. I should also say that they have been a critical partner in the management of our foreign exchange market because of the swap transactions that the Bank of Ghana undertakes with Afrexim Bank. Swap lines are very important for foreign exchange management, and the bank over the years has kept faith with us. We have outstanding swap lines to the tune of nearly 800 million. This allows us to have a proper functioning of our foreign exchange market, and this is very key to our economic growth. During the discussions on the debt exchange, in terms of some of the critical lines that we needed to preserve, were these swap lines to allow the functioning of our foreign exchange market. And we are happy to say that they agreed to extend these swap lines into 2023 and 2024. So thank you very much, Professor Orama, for all that you have done for us in Ghana. We are very happy to be part of this launch of the 30th anniversary celebrations of the bank to be held in Accra next month. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Governor. May I invite at this point Your Excellency, the President and Chairman of the Afrexim Bank, President Orama, to give us his short remarks.
Thank you very much, Master of Ceremony. Let me also start by thanking my dear brothers and sisters, the Honorable Mohammed Amin Adam, Minister of State for Finance, the Governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Addison, and our sister, Mr. Abubakar, the Minister of State for Information, and also let me extend our appreciation to the press people who have all joined us here, as well as the banks and some of our clients in Ghana who have come excuse me, in support of the launch of the 30th anniversary event and the 30th annual general meeting. So good evening to you all.
Good evening.
I would like to begin by extending our appreciation to His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Ghana, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, and his government for accepting to host the 30th annual meeting and the 30th anniversary celebrations of the bank, which will be held, as the Honorable Minister of Finance mentioned, at the Accra International Conference Center during June 18 to 21st, that is next month. It may sound easy to hear that Ghana is hosting it, but it's actually a reflection of the confidence, of the support Ghana gives that they accepted to host this event despite the economic difficulties that the country was going through. Hosting an event like this is not free of cost. So to take it on is something that requires confidence, requires that the host also be a strong supporter of the institution being hosted. So we are very grateful to the government and indeed the people of Ghana for this. The decision to host reaffirms, as I mentioned, the strength of the partnership between the Republic of Ghana and the Afreximbank, and the immense value the government places on the relationship we have, as well as on other Pan-African institutions and initiatives. Having hosted the annual meeting of the African Development Bank only last year, and other Pan-African institutions in prior years, Ghana has indeed established itself as a key destination for Pan-African events and initiatives. The choice of Ghana as host of Afreximbank's 30th anniversary was not a difficult one. Ghana is the birthplace of Pan-Africanism, and its pioneer leader and successive leaders have shown unwavering commitment to the Pan-African ideals, which Afreximbank subscribed to fully. Also, the recent successful year of return ushered in a new sense of belonging and oneness, irrespective of geographic boundaries. So Ghana has offered every African, wherever they may be, an umbrella, a home for themselves. And Afreximbank puts itself forward as an institution for all Africans, wherever they may be. Ghana was also the first country one of the first countries to respond to Afreximbank's capital increase that was launched in late 2021. And Ghana did that despite the COVID-19 pandemic that was still raging at that time and associated financial and economic challenges. I dare say that the huge success we've seen with that capital increase owes a lot to the pioneering move of Ghana as the lead in putting its money where its mouth is. The 30th anniversary celebration will be the first gathering of Global Africa, as we call it, because it will be the first annual meeting of Afreximbank that will welcome our brothers and sisters from the Caribbean and diaspora as participating states of Afreximbank, following the decision by the Caribbean community last year to join Afreximbank and use Afreximbank as a vehicle for integration of trade, investments, and economic relations between Africa and the Caribbean. So we will hold the first meeting of Global Africa here next month. So to be a meeting of all Africans, not only the geographic Africa, as I mentioned, Global Africa, from all walks of life, with stakeholders traversing the Caribbean, Europe, Latin America, Asia, wherever we see Africans. And we are proud that we will do this in the home country of the Pan-Africanists who led the fight for independence, not only independence on paper, but independence of our mind from the colonial legacies we all inherited. So in addition to our shareholders who will be here, we expect African leaders, and we are really very, very pleased and very grateful to His Excellency President Akufo-Addo for extending invitation not only to his colleagues and peers, other African leaders, but also the leaders from the Caribbean. We also expect ministers from Africa and the Caribbean, governors of central bank, captains of industry, CEOs of banks and non-bank institutions, NGOs, university professors, SMEs, and all those that normally attend our events. We expect about 3,000 to 4,000 guests here during that week. We're also expecting, as I mentioned, that we'll be joined by prime ministers, government officials, and corporate leaders from the Caribbean and the wider African diaspora from all parts of the world. From institutional point of view, of course, the African Union, the FCFA Secretariat, the UN institutions, especially the UN Economic Commission for Africa, and all those agencies associated with them are also expected to join us as we celebrate the 30th anniversary of the bank. So, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the choice of the overarching team delivering the vision, building prosperity for Africans, is informed by the critical role that our present bank has played over the last 3 decades in the promotion of economic integration in Africa through support for intra-African trade and investment. It is obvious that those founding fathers of the bank who made the decision to set up the bank literally saw vision. If there wasn't an Afrexim bank, I wonder how Africa would have been able to stand up and say they were able to acquire their own the COVID-19 vaccine that Afrexim Bank supported the continent to acquire. And at a time, in a multi-crisis world we are seeing today, where we see we go from one crisis to another, many parts of the world are becoming insular. It's everyone to themselves and God for us all. And it is Afrexim Bank and similar institutions that are beginning to stand up for the continent to provide the support that we need to cross the line, help us to weather the storm. So, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as we celebrate our 30th anniversary, we also look ahead and celebrate the importance of our own institutions in the journey we started when we fought for independence, and many of the countries got independence in the 1960s, the journey for self-reliance. So the event will provide an opportunity to confront challenges and re-energize Africans towards the attainment of the Pan-African vision of an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful continent driven by its citizens, representing a dynamic force in the international arena. We are once again grateful to the government and people of Ghana for accommodating this important event in the national calendar of events and granting it the significant attention it deserves. We look forward to an exciting 4 days of breathtaking policy discourse and Ghanaian and African cultural extravaganza. Time depressed. Thank you, Honorable Minister Governor, for your attention, and I pause for any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, President Orama. We have come to the end of the speeches and straight to the Q&A session. Our speakers, as introduced, would field questions from the media. Because of the number of journalists we have and the time limitations, we would only take one question per journalist. What I would do would be to take about 2 or 3 questions and have them answered, then I'll come around for another set. I'll take questions in here and also be fed questions which will be posted online. So if at a point you see me firing questions here without seeing anyone asking the questions, then you know I have been fed questions from our good friends who are online. So, you know the protocol already. Once you are ready to ask a question, you raise your hands. Would invite you to ask the question. The ladies would bring you the mic, and then you introduce yourself and then ask the question. We are good to go. Okay, so whilst you're waiting for the room to warm up a bit so the questions come, I already have one here. And interestingly, it goes to you, Prof. Orama. It is from Indamu Sandu, Business Times, Zimbabwe. He says, Prof. Orama, you are on record as saying Afrexim Bank is there to solve some of the financial challenges facing the economy. How did the bank fare over the last 30 years in this regard? Your question, Prof.
No, thank you very much. Well, all the things that Afrexim Bank did were those things that we believe brought additionality, that's development impact on the continent. We always bore in mind and continue to bear in mind that Afrexim Bank is not just any bank. There was a reason to establish Afrexim Bank. And that is why we go in to support our countries when others pack and run away. So, and it's in that context that I will touch on a few things that we've done. First of all, total disbursements over the past 30 years, almost $90 billion. At times of crisis, Afrexim Bank has stood shoulder to shoulder with our countries. During the commodity crisis of 2015-2016, when many international banks left the continent, Afrexim Bank made sure that our countries, and the banks especially, did not go into trade payment defaults, that they adjusted in an orderly manner to the shock. We disbursed about $10 billion to many countries, which helped avert the situation of default. Because the problem with defaulting on trade debt payment is that trade dries up and it takes a long time for it to come back, even when things recover. During the COVID-19 pandemic, all of you knew what happened. It was everyone to himself and God for us all. Even to buy face masks, test kits, and so on was impossible. Even when people had money to do so, there was nobody willing to sell. Afrexim Bank worked with the African Union. We put together the African Medical Supplies Platform that made it possible for us to pool the African demand, and then we provided financing under a program we called a PATINFA, the Pandemic Trade Impact Mitigation Facility, through which we disbursed over 2 years about $16 billion to many countries, that made it possible for them to buy test kits, that made it possible for them to pay for backlog of trade debt, made it possible for them to buy personal protective equipment, for them to import food, for them to import fertilizer at that time. And then the vaccines came. Again, Africa was left behind. There was no credible means of accessing vaccines because every country wanted first to get their people vaccinated. Again, Afrexim Bank was mandated by the African Union to work with the envoys to find a solution, which we did. Again, we used the African Medical Supplies Platform to pool the demand for Africa together, and then we provided a $2 billion guarantee that covered all the 30% purchase that was a gap Africa had at that time. Ukraine crisis just followed immediately after that. Again, issue of food, issue of fertilizers, the same issues. No banks were willing to do anything to support. Afrexim Bank put together a Ukraine crisis adjustment trade finance program for Africa, which has so far disbursed $8 billion. We also put together an Africa Trade Exchange, a digital platform that we've used to pool the demand for food, for fertilizers, that made it possible for every country, whether they are small island economies or large economies, to buy these items at the same cost and get supported by Afrexim Bank. It's inconceivable that any of this would have been possible without an Afrexim Bank being there. And if you look around, today many international banks are exiting the continent. Under a strategy that Afrexim Bank is implementing, we are making sure that these banks are acquired by African financial institutions, because that is the only way to bring stability to our financial system. A situation where our banks are dominated by foreign-owned institutions is not that healthy. While we welcome foreign investors, we want to be like other countries, because Americans own American banks, Europeans own European banks, Chinese own Chinese banks, Indians own Indian banks. Africans should own the majority of African banks if we want to avoid stability, stability in the continent. So these are some of the things. Of course, we can go on the manufacturing side and the many other things that the bank has been able to do in these 30 years. There will be time enough to talk about it when we come to Accra.
Thank you. Thank you very much, President Orama. Okay, I see a hand up there. Okay.
Kingsley Asara, Ghanaian Times. So I want to find out the bank's total disbursement to Ghana over the 30 years period. 2, debt is a challenge now. That's why we have gone to IMF. I want to find out whether the Afrexim Bank has plans to establish a fund which Africans can tap when there's crisis, so that will not go to IMF. We can find solutions to our own problems. And my third question, what will be your strategy, your solutions, your suggestions to address our growing debt if you meet in Accra? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kingsley. But may I remind you that because of the numbers and time limitations, we would only permit a question per journalist, please. There's one hand up here.
Thank you. My name is John Awuni Kesben. Somewhere last year, I understand the Director General of AFTA was in London to deliver a lecture. And in that very lecture, he did mention that it is high time Africa moved from raw material hub to agribusiness. And one thing that comes to mind is cocoa. Ghana, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire produce more than half of the world's cocoa. So I want to find out from Prof. whether Afri-Exim Bank is considering investing in the manufacturing sector, i.e. the chocolate, because all the three countries that produce more than half of the world cocoa rakes in about $12 to $20 billion, while the chocolate industry is in excess of $150 billion. So will they consider investing in that regard so that Africa will not just be a raw material hub? Thank you.
Thank you, John. There's a hand up behind you. Gentleman, yes.
All right, my name is Mark. I work with UTV. Okay, mine is Afri-Exim Bank. Having listened to the president, it's beautiful, telling us over the last 30 years, disbursement over 90 billion. And AFTA is currently in place. Despite our AFTA being in place, we still have this barrier issues between the various countries, roadblocks. We don't have a seamless transportation of goods from one country to the other. Being Afri-Exim Bank and coming to promote AFTA, would you consider addressing this issue where countries should see should seamlessly work with each other so, in terms of trade, such that I think if it's done this way, then the next 30 years, you'll be recounting a bigger impact on Africa than 90 billion. So if AFTA works well, would you consider this topic during your AGM? Thank you.
Okay, so there's a gentleman in white. If you would kindly permit, so we answer President Rama. You want to answer? Okay. No, I was saying you can fill the questions when you're ready. The first one is from Kingsley, and I think he's talking about he wants to know the bank's total disbursement to Ghana over the years. He has a few other questions, but I'll take Kingsley's first question. I'm sorry, Kingsley. And then the second one is from John, who says the Director General of AFTA is asking for Africans providing more value to their products rather than just providing raw commodities. The third one is from Mike of UTV, who is looking at reducing the barriers which seem to be mitigating against the successes that AFTA could talk, if my summarizing of the questions are correct.
Thank you very much. As the governor mentioned, Ghana was the first recipient of a Afri-Exim Bank facility on September 1, 1993, when we did the Ghana Cocoa Board transaction. Since then, we've supported Ghana in many ways, many sectors, the aviation, agriculture, processing, financial institutions, energy, hospitality, name it, we had done so. And over $7 billion of interventions we've done here. Current exposure to Ghana is in excess of $1.7 billion. Pipeline transactions, almost $2 billion. So that is the extent of what we're doing in Ghana. Despite the challenges the country faced last year, we never withdrew. We continued to support different businesses here. I think there's hardly any bank in Ghana that doesn't benefit from a line of credit of some sort from Afrexim Bank. So Ghana has been a strong supporter, and because Ghana has been a strong supporter, Afrexim Bank in turn also has been a strong supporter of Ghana. And you mentioned creating an IMF-like institution for Africa. I know there's something that the African Development Bank proposed to do. The only thing I can tell you is that Afrexim Bank provides certain kinds of support that will help countries to wade through difficulties and make it easier for them to manage shocks, so that the frequency of going to IMF can be reduced. But on top of that, we just launched last year, working with the UN Economic Commission for Africa, a facility called the Liquidity and Sustainability Facility. You know, what happened to Ghana really was a liquidity issue. It wasn't as if Ghana was insolvent. The challenge Ghana faced was a liquidity issue that put Ghana in the situation that it found itself last year. Because the markets went the way they did, so access to those markets to refinance maturing obligations became difficult. And of course, the usual domino effects follow, and usually then the economy gets worse for it. So what the Liquidity and Sustainability Facility does is that it introduces a repo for African debt instruments. We do not have that. Other geographies have repos. And because we do not have repo, similarly rated countries, that is in Africa and Europe, you find a situation where the one in Africa is paying so many times higher than the one in Europe or elsewhere where there are repos. And that is because the bonds issued by Africans do not have liquidity. So the LSF, the Liquidity and Sustainability Facility we're implementing now, which we hope will grow, provides an avenue for that liquidity. And we believe that what it will then do is that it will shrink the yield on African issued bonds, improve their pricing, and makes it easier for African countries to raise money and avoid situations where tight liquidity situations kind of precipitates economic crisis. The issue of industrialization, we have 4 pillars that underpin the strategy we are running, the 6th strategic plan. The arrowhead of our strategy is intra-African trade and AFCFTA implementation. The other pillar which are what supports the arrowhead are industrialization, export development, of course, our usual global trade finance leadership, and our financial performance and soundness as the 4th. With regard to industrialization and export development, the goal there is to expand value addition on the continent. And the value addition, I recognize 2 things, that we have, yes, we have resources, we have cocoa, we have copper and all those. And as much as possible, where it becomes economical, we can add value to those. But we also regard our biggest resource to be our people, the human beings we have. So it may well be that you may actually find that you can export your raw materials as raw, because if the cost of processing it is very high, if it's capital intensive to process, whereas you have another activity that is labor intensive, you may continue to export the capital intensive the way it is and create value where you have labor-intensive activities. So our strategy takes account of all of this, and it is working very well. In Cote d'Ivoire, for example, Afrexim Bank helped create 100,000 ton processing capacity that made it possible for Cote d'Ivoire to become the #1 in adding value, semi-processing of cocoa. We have supported many countries to do cotton and all those. We have an investment in Arise integrated industrial platforms, through which we've developed industrial parks in Gabon, in Togo, in Benin. We are building in Cote d'Ivoire. We are building in Nigeria. We developed the one for meat packing in Chad. In Rwanda, we are doing a battery park, two parks for battery in Zambia and the DRC, and then another park in Kenya. But not only, if you for a moment forget those ones we are taking a proprietary interest in through Arise, we're also financing the companies that are doing the same or who are in industries. For example, we are proud to have contributed very strongly in the Dangote refineries that will be opening on the 22nd. The Dangote refinery is perhaps the largest heavy industry ever done on the continent, because about $19 billion. We are the largest financier of that project. So the issue of value addition is a priority for us. Most of the things we do are not only just creating the goods, but we know that if you create the goods and you don't have the markets, the industries will collapse. So we've also developed an export trading company initiative where we are helping to support the budgets of export trading companies, use trade information digitally, and of course through the trade fairs we're organizing to create access to markets, and also making sure that whatever we do promotes the growth of regional supply chains. And that then leads me smoothly to the last question that was asked about the difficulties in trading amongst ourselves. Yeah, you see, you have to go back and understand where Africa is coming from. Don't forget that we had years of colonialism, colonial legacy. And the strategy of colonialism was divide and rule. So we were split into 55 atomistic countries, and which were run in a way that they hardly related with their neighbors, but only with the metropolitan powers, in such a way that they could only produce raw materials and export to the metropolitan powers and receive finished goods back. So the arrangement was to put those countries in a perpetual terms of trade imbalance. You only know about it when there is a shock. Because when there is no shock, in a dynamic way, you find money to pay, but you are always owing money, because you export something that is of less value than what you import. And that was the way it was organized. So to break through these things is not easy, as you know. And in 1963, when the first meeting of the Organization of African Unity was held, breaking it was something topmost on their mind. At that meeting, they said they wanted to create a continental free trade agreement. They said they wanted to start a trade fair. They said they wanted to start a transit scheme, because they knew that many countries had, we have about 16 landlocked countries. We have about 87,000 kilometers of borders. So they wanted to have those transit schemes. They wanted to have an arrangement that would help them trade their commodities among themselves for value addition and industrialization. None of these things have been implemented, but they remained critical, crucial to dealing with the issue you raised. So I'm very pleased today that of all those things they listed, I think Afrexim Bank has helped to deliver them. They wanted to create what they called then an African Payment and Clearing Union. As the governor said, we have delivered a Pan-African payment and settlement system, making it possible to pay for African goods in local currency. It's the early days, but there's no doubt that you pick up and it will change things. And when that payment system that makes it possible for us to domesticate all intra-African trade payments become fully adopted, it also impacts our foreign debt status. Because if it happens that an Egyptian contractor comes to Ghana to build roads, and Ghana pays in Ghanaian cedi not to borrow dollars or euro or yuan to do that, it changes the situation because you are paying with your local currency for that. So we've been able to do that. They asked for trade fair. We've delivered the intra-African trade fair, which is done once every 2 years. The next one will be held in Egypt between the 9th and 15th of November this year. The one we had last time in 2021 in Durban attracted 32,000 people, deals of 42 billion, but we believe that this one coming in a few months will even be bigger. We've also launched a transit scheme, which we piloted in the commercial region, and the idea now is to make it a global thing. Because today, if somebody carrying goods will be crossing more than one border, they will have to post transit bonds at each border. So what we've done is to create a regional transit bond, so that with the Afrexim Bank bond, you can go from Cape to Cairo with just that bond. You don't need to stop to put it. So all these issues you're talking about, stopping at the ports and all that, will be minimized. We've also started dealing with the issue of standards. Because we have 55 countries, every country has its own standard. So what we've done is provide grants, help mobilize grants to support the African Regional Standard Organization to harmonize standards. We so far harmonized 155 standards. We've done for automotives, we've done for pharmaceuticals and medical equipment. We are now doing for textiles. And we prioritize those based on what the Council of Ministers of Trade told us to prioritize. But one thing is to have the standards, the other is to have the testing and certification. So we created a subsidiary called the Africa Quality Assurance Center that is building testing and certifications labs across the continent. We have built about 5 of them. One already is finished, it's operating. In a joint venture, a partnership with Bureau Veritas. And we also believe that the only thing that can make us vote these 110 borders is digital technology. And that is why we have invested so heavily in what we call the Africa Trade Gateway, a digital platform that makes it possible for trade information to be made available easily at the touch of a button, for trade regulations to be made available the same way. We believe that way people can find their markets easily, because the biggest problem we have is that somebody in Ghana does not know what to buy from Malawi, for example. But we know what to buy from China. We know what to buy from India. We know what to buy from Europe, and so on and so forth. So these are some of the things we are doing. Early days for some of them, but a journey of 1,000 kilometers, they say, starts with one step. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Orama. I'll take a few questions online and come back in here. I have one from Cote d'Ivoire. is from Isuf Kamagati of the Financial Afrique. And I think this goes to the Honorable Minister. It says the IMF has validated the 3 billion support program to Ghana. This is good news. What emergency measures will the government of Ghana adopt to anticipate possible shocks in the future? That's the first question. Then I have one for President Orama from Cameroon. It's from Afrique24. The journalist is Fraten Indasiya Senga. Forgive me, I hope I haven't crucified the name. It says the 2023 General Assemblies also mark an important milestone with the celebration of the bank's 30th anniversary. What adjustments will you make to meet the trade needs of African states? And I believe this goes to President Orama. Then I have Brian Ngugi from Nairobi, from the Standard newspaper. And he says, does the Afrexim Bank provide funding to bolster falling foreign exchange reserves? If so, which countries are eligible to apply? So we'll take these three, and then I'll come back to our good people in the room. Mr. Minister.
Well, thank you. A very good question. I didn't want this discussion to focus on the IMF. We are here to celebrate Afrexim Bank because Afrexim Bank is doing a lot in its own right. And we have to celebrate that. But to answer this question, the program just approved is intended to achieve a number of objectives. Macroeconomic stability is key to this. We want to reduce inflation. We want our currency to be stable and stronger. We want interest rates to come down so that we can lend more to the private sector. And above all, we want to use this as the platform for accelerating growth. But the second objective is debt sustainability. We want to be able to reduce our debt levels to sustainable levels. Somebody may ask, so why do we want Afrexim Bank to increase its presence if we want to reduce debt levels to sustainable levels? But it is possible we can do this because Afrexim Bank has been offering Ghana less expensive, less costly facilities, concessional facilities, and we think that we can continue to collaborate and work together to increase concessional lending, which will not be too onerous a cost on our debt levels. But the third one, which is more important, is to build our resilience so that we do not become easily vulnerable to shocks. And to be able to do this will require the implementation of significant structural reforms. This program has a big component on structural reforms. Up to 50 different structural reforms are to be implemented through this program. This is how we can build our resilience so that we can be able to withstand shocks that may come against us in future. So this is what I can say to the question, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. President Orama, would you take your question, please?
Thank you very much. We're not IMF, but we support countries. If you recall, I said a few things about supporting countries to make sure they didn't go into default. Because normally when you get into a shock, you have a backlog of letters of credit, trade debt payments that come in. Normally, because they come like that, they hit the reserves, the countries then maybe default because they don't have enough money. And the government mentioned the issue about swap facilities. We provide swap facilities which central banks use to beef up their reserves. We also, indirectly, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a reserve boosting mechanism, but indirectly it will help boost it. When we provide certain kinds of facilities that help even commercial banks to pay for those backlog of trade debt payments, the effect is that it delays the call on the reserves of the country. So it also helps to boost. But we do not technically do balance of payment lending. Eligibility for you to access our facility, first you have to be from a member country of the bank, or you must be buying something from a member country of the bank. The rest are things that we ask to determine whether the deal is bankable or not. But the fundamental thing, we lend to African countries. Those buying or selling something to Africa, there must be an African leg in what we do, or Caribbean leg now in what we do. So it's Afro-Caribbean. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Orama. Okay, so I'm back here. Apparently, I can get missing and still be seen. Okay, there's a gentleman in white. Yes, please.
Okay, my name is Mark Solofori. I write for the Chronicle newspaper. President, I would like to take you to Europe and bring you to Africa and then to Ghana. My question is centered on forest reserves. We are all seeing what is happening across the globe, and the war in Ukraine, what it is bringing as far as Syria is concerned. In Africa, AFTA is also here trying to help us trade amongst ourselves. And we have Afri-Exim Bank. We're going to have a 4-day meeting here in Accra. Would you want to discuss how best the bank could support industries or companies in Africa that have interest in producing, let's say, rice and some things that we import, so that in the near future we don't have to use the little forest reserves to import things like that. I know in Ghana the government has already banned importation of rice and others, and there are some companies in Ghana who have taken steps to producing those things. Would you want to consider discussing it at the meeting for a way out? Thank you.
Okay, there's a gentleman here.
Thank you very much. My name is Winston Taki of Metro TV. First of all, I would like to congratulate Afrexim Bank for phenomenal contribution to the African continent. 30 years is not mean feat. One thing I would like to understand is in the next 30 years, possibly, God willing, we will all be alive. What should we be looking forward to, the plan for the continent in terms of financing? Another aspect I'd like you to touch on is climate financing, whether we are ready to self-finance climate-related projects on the continent, which at the moment we need critically. Energy is also a very important aspect to pushing our industrialization drive, because most African countries have plans, but the supply and the cost of energy has made it difficult to push the trade activities in intra-African regions and also amongst countries. Thank you very much.
So I'll take a third one, and then President Orama can take the question, since all of them seem to be going his way.
Thank you very much. The name is Justice. I work for the Xinhua News Agency of China. Now, you mentioned the issue about the PAPs, and I would like to know, I was expecting you to tell us where we have gotten to in the implementation, because it was right here in this hall last year that you and the AFCFTA launched the PAPs, and there was a lot of expectation. And where have we gotten to? Secondly, I would like to bring your mind back to a question that was asked earlier about how to help Africa, leverage on our commodities to actually become a production hub rather than just a source of raw materials. Now, when you look at the issue about the BRICS discussions that are going on, you are beginning to see countries looking at ways of avoiding, currency that has been weaponized to be used, in various ways when it suits the countries that, control those currencies. But here in Africa, we have, a very large percentage of the world's natural resources. So when you listen to the discussions going around about the BRICS countries and, how they are trying to, create that space for themselves to avoid a currency that is being weaponized against the whole world, what ideas are you picking from it? What indications are we seeing from it that you can use at your meetings here in Accra that will benefit the entire continent? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your questions. President Urama.
Thank you. I think the first question was essentially whether we finance import substitution. That is what I get from there. We finance exports, but we also support intra-African trade. Supporting intra-African trade is kind of promoting regional value chains, but in the process of supporting exports, we also then support import substitution, because what we support for export most of the time first feeds into the domestic industries or the domestic market before the excess goes out. So to that extent, yes, we do support activities that also produce goods from the point of view of import substitution, although that is not the primary goal for us. But as we implement our trade mandate, import substitution then comes in. I think that the second question is about forex reserve. No, I've done with that forex reserve. What the next 30 years will look like. Okay. Well, for the next 30 years, what we think is that Africa will be as strong as its financial institution bring it to. And its financial institutions can only make Africa stronger if they themselves are strong. So we place a lot of emphasis on creating a very strong, large bank. It's only when you are like that that you can earn a seat on the table. That is when you can offer more concessional loans. That's when you can offer more diversified products. That's where you can restore dignity to your people. So we want an Afrexim bank that will be much bigger than it is today. It took us 30 years to reach 30 billion. I say what I say because I joined the bank from day one. So I remember that our total assets in our first year of operation, 94-95, was about $140 million. By December, it was total assets and guarantees were $32 billion. Took 30 years, but I expect that we will add another 30 years in less than 6 years. We will. I also look at the Bank of the Future. We have a project called Bank of the Future project. That Bank of the Future project will be a digital Afrexim bank. And that is why we've made a lot and continue to make a lot of investments on digital. I mentioned when I was speaking what we call the Africa Trade Gateway. The Africa Trade Gateway is a super platform that makes it possible for people to access trade information, access customer due diligence information, the governor talked about the MANSA, access e-commerce platform, access the payment platform, access credit facilities, and so on. I do not think that my grandchildren will approach an Afrexim bank the way our customers approach us today. So we have that long-term vision of the Bank of the Future that will be digitally driven. So essentially, a big bank that understands the continent, that continues to put Africa first, a bank that is digitally driven, again, all for the interest for which it was established. And you also, another person, you asked about energy, climate change, energy financing. I think everybody knows now that the issue of climate is something is important, but Africa and Africans are more of victims than contributors to the problem. We have the flooding that happened in Malawi, in South Sudan, in all those places. We have desertification everywhere. We have the island economies coming under the sea, and so on and so forth. We do not generate the carbon that is causing all these things. We all know that. As a matter of fact, the Central Africa is a carbon sink. So it absorbs more carbon than it emits. So what do you tell somebody who absorbs more carbon than emits to do again? So we know, if some of you go to your villages, you will find that the young people going to school are studying with maybe kerosene lamp. Then what are you going to tell that person to the energy efficient to switch off the kerosene lamp? So we know that we are not contributing, but we are the victims. And that is why we think the emphasis for us and for the continent should be on adaptation. Because that's where the risks are for us. In the global discussion about this, we must put pressure on those who contribute the most of the carbon to reduce their carbon emissions. While we deal with adaptation. If we look at the per capita, the per capita emissions and compare it with what you call the targets that we have set for emissions for things to begin to normalize again, and we have done this, you will find that Africans still have a headroom to emit more, because we need to have the energy to run our industries. But others have to reduce theirs for things to be better. But I know it's a long talk. The weak can only talk and do nothing. So the best thing for us is to deal with the clear and present danger, which is the adaptation, the flooding, all the things. How do we help the countries that do not have enough rain? How do we help them to build dams, use irrigation to produce, so that people are not displaced? That's why we have launched a facility we called a climate adaptation facility. We are now trying to implement in Kenya, and hopefully we will replicate elsewhere. We do not have much money, so the money we have, we think we put it to use to deal with what we think is the greatest problem the continent faces because of the climate. And the PAPS implementation status, yes, since that time, PAPS started commercial operations. It's still at low levels because when you start something as big as that, there are so many changes that need to happen, institutional changes, process changes. So those are happening now. We've now introduced a commercial bank settlement model, which some countries asked for. That required some tweaking of the system and the governance framework, and so on. So it started operations, it started commercial services, but you will not notice it. In fact, many of the banks, I think Ghana Commercial Bank, I don't know whether you are the first, Kofi, to do PAPS here. So, but before long, you will see the activities ramp up very well. So it's operating commercial services, and we hope and expect that it will expand very rapidly in the months and years ahead. And the BRICS, I think the BRICS should learn from us. We started this issue of payment system for Africa, but ours is not about any weaponization, any currency. We're just doing something that we thought will help us promote intra-African trade, will help us deal with the problems we face. It's not normal that we spend $5 billion a year for transactions just going from one country in Africa to another for money we don't have. It's not also good that because of these multiple currencies, we cannot trade amongst ourselves. So we're just trying to deal with that. The BRICS arrangement, they have another purpose to deal with weaponization. So ours is of different purpose. So we cannot, I don't think we can learn from each other because the methods will be different. So.
Thank you very much, President Turama. Okay.
To Mr. President's responses on the energy sector investment, Mr. President, this can be considered an ambassadorial role or consultancy. I'm sure you think about that.
Yes.
Okay. But what I want to say is that as far as energy sector is concerned, Afrexim Bank is already investing in Ghana's energy sector, and they have committed up to about 528 million United States dollars in pipeline projects in the energy sector. Whether you are talking, yes. And this covers VRA capital infrastructure, trade finance facility for BDCs, bulk distribution companies, a new oil refinery, and then also a new oil terminal. These are all pipeline projects that are advanced, in negotiation, and we are very hopeful that negotiations will be concluded soon, so we can get these investments in Ghana to help build our infrastructure base for the energy sector. Ghana is the hub, the energy hub, even with the Dangote refinery. We are the energy hub of West Africa. Because products from Dangote refinery will have to pass through Ghana to many landlocked countries, around us, Burkina Faso, Mali, etc., etc. And so it is important we have solid energy infrastructure in Ghana so that we can play that role of an energy hub. You also know that Ghana supplies electricity to many of our neighboring countries. And I'm very happy that VRA infrastructure is one of the pipeline projects. But as far as the climate financing is concerned. I associate with the response that you gave, but I just want to remind all of us that 50% of revenue to many African countries come from oil exports. Okay, and so if we respond quickly to what the heavily polluting countries are asking us to do, that means we'll be losing substantial source of revenue to finance our development. We need to think about that. Secondly, it is also important to note that an estimated 500 billion barrels of crude oil will be stranded in the ground in Africa if we succumb to those calls. And we can exploit these resources in an environmentally friendly manner. There is technology and emerging technology that should allow us to exploit these resources to finance our development without causing damage to the environment. Norway is already doing something in that respect. We can also do that. And this is why I want to laud Afro-Exim Bank for your leadership in championing the cause of Africa's oil-producing countries to the extent that you've signed an agreement with the African Petroleum Producers Organization, APO, of which Ghana is a member, to establish an African Energy Bank, which Ghana is seeking to host. And Afro-Exim Bank is the sole shareholder of this initiative. This bank will help address the financing difficulties oil and gas industry is facing. Financing is becoming tightened and tightened every day because of the so-called energy transition. And I am very confident that Afro-Exim Bank will push this initiative further to reality so we can be able to finance our oil and gas industry to benefit our people. And as I said, while doing this, you will also be funding technologies that allow us to exploit these resources in an environmentally friendly manner. So I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. There's so many other questions that I have on my phone, but time would not permit us to get all those questions answered. Fortunately, the PR team is around, they're on ground here, and during the cocktail session, which would have right after the closing remarks and the final remarks, you can, and I'm speaking directly to the journalists, you can engage the PR team and they'll provide answers for you. For those online, I believe that they know already how those questions will be answered for them. It's unfortunate. I can see there's a lot of appetite on my left-hand side to fill the questions, and there's a lot of, I would say, friendly fire, I would say, coming on my phone. But we've gone way past my supper time for a gammon. So I would kindly invite, for the closing remarks and the final remarks, I would kindly invite His Excellency President Orama to give us his closing remarks, after which I would have the Honorable Minister say the final remarks, and then we would move out. Before then, I would entreat the panelists, I would say, to stay and take a group photo, and then we would all go outside for refreshments. So, President Orama, kindly give us your closing remarks.
Yeah, thank you very much, MC, and to all our guests, Honorable Minister, Governor, Ministers. Let me once again thank you for creating the time for your very busy schedule to join us here today. And for the governor that got the money going to his account, I know that many people are waiting for you. So I know that you will leave here back to your offices to deal with the issues that are preoccupying your offices these days. So we are really grateful that you found the time to come and support us today. I also like to thank all the journalists online and those who are here physically for coming this evening. It just demonstrates what is going to happen when we gather here in less than 4 weeks. We hope that you will give the discussions today the publicity they deserve. We also hope that you will give the run-up to the event, as well as the event, the positive publicity we all need. We must tell our own stories, because if we don't tell our stories in a good way, we will be compounding our problems because others don't want to tell our stories for us in a good way. So I hope we can count on you to continue to support us. Our communications team, I think Amma is here with her colleagues, will be available to answer any questions you may have. Once again, I would like, on behalf of our board and management, to thank His Excellency President Akufo-Addo for agreeing to host the annual meetings. We look forward to an eventful, enjoyable, and remarkable 30th annual general meeting and 30th anniversary. Thank you, and have a nice evening.
Thank you very much, President Orama. May I now invite the Honorable Minister.
I also want to thank Mr. President Orama and the Afrexim Bank on behalf of our government, on behalf of my colleagues here, for choosing to host, for choosing to hold the annual general meeting and the 30th anniversary celebration in Ghana, in our very beautiful city of Accra. This is further demonstration of a growing relationship between Ghana and Afrexim Bank. We will use that opportunity also to deepen that relationship. And I see this relationship is a symbiotic relationship. You help us to grow our economy, we create a strong market, and then you also grow your portfolio. So it's a symbiotic relationship. And this collaboration is the type of collaboration that can help develop African countries. This is the kind of South-South cooperation that we need, that we have strong African institutions supporting African development. We can do it by ourselves, even though we need the support now from other sources. If we put our acts together, we can build together. Let me also add that during our economic recovery efforts, Afrexim Bank has stood by us. I hope that in the years ahead, you will even stand by us stronger and stronger. I want to thank you all for the opportunity, and I hope that you will all be part of this great celebration, the celebration of an African success. I thank you once again.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Thank you to all of you, and we look forward to seeing you in June when we have the Afrexim Bank annual meetings in Accra. Please note it will be from the 18th to 21st right here in Accra. Once again, thank you and have a good evening.